And what we have here is we have the trigonometry review for day 1, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We first want to review some things about how super easy stuff for just a little reminder back to our Algebra 2. And so what we have here is x squared equals 100. And we know that when we go ahead and take the square root from both sides. So for example, we square root both sides. And I get x equals plus or minus 10. Over here for letter B, very similar, we're going to take the square root on both sides. And I get x equals, and first of all, let's quickly review with our radicals. We would have breaking this down to 4 times 5. And what is the square root of 4? 2, and we're left with the root 5. And that would be plus or minus, because remember, we have actually 2 solutions for x. Letter C, again, square root, and I get x equals plus or minus 15. Going over here, now that was super easy. Now here's some easy ones. We want to go ahead and we want to see, first of all, we have to balance this. We want to divide by 2 on both sides. So when I divide by 2, I get x squared. And when I have this, dividing by 2, what do I get? I get 49. And this is perfect. It's already set up for you because 49 is going to be a perfect square. So I take the square root of both sides, and I get plus or minus 7. Letter B. What do I want to do to both sides of the equation? Add 5. Again, you end up with a perfect square of 25. I take the square root of both sides, and I get x equals plus or minus 5. Now this is a 2-step equation. I first subtract the 4, so I get 3x squared equals 48. What is 48 divided by 3? Okay, so 48 divided by 3, 16. Another perfect square. So what is the square root of 16? Plus or minus 4. Next section, a little bit harder, okay? And this is reviews back to our actual Algebra 2. If I take the square root of both sides, okay, I get x minus 4 equals plus or minus 7. So I'm going to have 2 solutions here. I'm going to have x equals 4 plus 7 and x equals 4 minus 7. So I get 11 and negative 3. Okay. Over here, letter B, I take the square root of both sides. So I get x plus 3 equals plus or minus 12. I have x plus 12, or, I'm sorry, I messed that up. X equals negative 3 plus 12. You subtract 3 on both sides, and x equals negative 3 minus 12. I get x equals 9, and x equals negative 15. Letter C of this section, take the square root. I get x minus 6 equals plus or minus 10. Add 6 to both sides, so x equals 6 plus 10, or x equals 6 minus 10. So x is 16, or negative 4. Now we want to go into some of our factoring, starting with some easy stuff, and then we're going to review quickly the quadratic formula. So here, for number 4 here, we want to get everything into, or I'm sorry, we're all over the place. We want to get everything to the left-hand side, okay? So this is going to be a trinomial, all right? So we were going to have x squared plus 5x minus 14 equals 0. We want to go ahead and factor this. So going back to our Algebra 2, x. What are 2 numbers that multiply to negative 14, but add together to give me 5. Okay, well I know some factors are 14 and 1, 7 and 2. So it looks like 7 and 2. Now we want to have it a positive 7 and a negative 2. This gives me the negative 14, but when I add 7 plus negative 2, I get a positive 5. I go ahead and solve by setting each to 0. X equals negative 7. X equals 2. Letter B, x squared minus x minus 56 equals 0. I go ahead and I actually factor this. X minus 8 plus 7. So I get x equals 8, x equals negative 7. X squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. X minus 3, x plus 1. So I get x equals 3, x equals negative 1. Here I'm going to add that 4 to both sides, so I get x squared plus 10x plus 24 equals 0. So now we need two numbers that multiply in order to give me 24. And 8 and 3 is 11. No, that's not going to work. Okay, 6 and 4. So x plus 6, x plus 4, and I solve it. And I get x equals negative 6 and x equals negative 4. So we have a little problem though on this worksheet. We're missing something. We're missing the square root. So we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We didn't get that root in there, whoever printed this out, so we forgot that root. I don't think they used equation editor. So we want to, first of all, identify our ABCs, because here's our quadratic, here's the formula. So what is my A value? Remember, this is of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So my A is 2. My B, there's nothing there, but be careful that negative is going to be negative 1. And my C is 3. Oops, I did not show you anything. I just moved off the page. So those are my A, B, C. So now we look at my formula. It's the opposite of negative 1 plus or minus, what is B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. What is 2 times A? 4. So I get 1 plus or minus, yikes, what did we give you already in the first one? 4 times 2 is 8, 24, 1 minus 24 is the square root of negative 23 all over 4. Did that already go right? So wow, we started giving you imaginary before we started. 2, let's see, negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times, yeah, I think that's it. Let's try another one. A is 2, b is 16. Be careful, this would go over there. That's going to be a positive 12. I almost messed that up and put in negative 12. So we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. All right. So we go ahead. This is 196 minus 96. So I get negative 16 plus the square root of 100 over 4. Negative 16 plus or minus 10 over 4. Negative 16 plus 10 is negative 6 over 4, so negative 6/4, or negative 26/4. And we could reduce both of those. Last one, 1 the number in front of the x. Here you have a negative 5. And remember, this would be plus 6. So 5 plus or minus, because the opposite of negative 5 is 5. So 5 plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So this would be 5 plus or minus the square root. Well, this is 4 times 1 times 6 is 24. 25 minus 24 is 1. So 5 plus 1 over 2 or 5 minus 1 over 2. 3 or 2 is my answer. So what you're going to do for your assignment is you're going to go ahead and you're going to do the opposite side, and that's just practicing your the factoring. So we have, most of them are just simple factoring. Notice when you go down to number 10, we're going to start doing, we have a coefficient in front of your x squared, and so it's going to be a little bit harder to factor, so slow down there and work through those.